2 years ago, I watched a 67-year-old woman die on my operating table because of a glass of orange juice. Not poison, not an allergic reaction, not some contaminated product. A regular glass of orange juice. The same kind sitting in your refrigerator right now. I've been a cardiologist for 22 years. I've performed over 3,100 cardiac procedures. I've held beating hearts in my hands during open chest surgeries. I've told families in waiting rooms that their loved one didn't make it. I've resuscitated patients whose hearts had given up on them when nobody else in the room believed there was still a chance. But that morning, standing over that woman's body while the monitors screamed a flatline, I felt something I hadn't felt since medical school: complete, paralyzing confusion. Because nothing about her death made sense. She had no history of heart disease. Her last checkup, 3 months earlier, showed mildly elevated cholesterol, but nothing alarming. She wasn't obese. She didn't smoke. She walked 40 minutes every day in her neighborhood. She took her medications. She did everything right. Her husband told me later, through tears that hadn't stopped for 6 hours, what her morning looked like. She woke up around 6:15, got out of bed, went to the kitchen, poured herself a tall glass of cold orange juice, the way she had every single morning for the past 30 years, drank the whole thing in about 90 seconds, then sat down at the kitchen table. 2 minutes later, she said she felt a strange pressure in her chest. Not pain exactly, pressure, like someone was sitting on her sternum. Her husband asked if she wanted to go to the hospital. She said no, it was probably just heartburn. She'd had a heavy dinner the night before. 4 minutes after that, she collapsed face first onto the kitchen table. Her husband thought she fainted. He shook her. She didn't respond. He called 911. The paramedics arrived in 8 minutes. They worked on her for 22 minutes. They got a pulse back twice, and both times it disappeared within seconds. By the time they got her to my hospital, she was in full cardiac arrest. We worked on her for another 34 minutes. We couldn't bring her back. She was 67 years old, a retired school teacher, a grandmother of 4, a woman who did everything she was told was healthy. And she died because of something that happens inside your body every single morning that almost no doctor ever warns you about. After her death, I couldn't sleep for 3 nights. I kept replaying the timeline. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. What did we miss? What did everyone miss? So I did something I'd never done before in my career. I stopped focusing exclusively on treating heart disease and started investigating when and why hearts fail in apparently healthy people. What I found over the next 18 months of research terrified me. I reviewed over 2,700 cases of sudden cardiac events in adults over 60. I analyzed the time of day, the activity at the time of the event, the patient's morning routine, their hydration status, their medication timing, everything. And a pattern emerged that was so clear, so obvious, so devastating that I couldn't believe the medical community hadn't been screaming about it from every rooftop. There are 6 specific things that millions of people over 60 do every single morning. Things that seem completely harmless, things that seem healthy, things that doctors never think to ask about, that are creating a silent cardiovascular catastrophe inside their bodies. That woman who died on my table was doing 3 of them every single morning for decades. And based on everything I've uncovered since, I'd bet everything I have that you or someone you love is doing at least 2 of them right now, today, this morning, without the slightest idea that it's happening. If you're over 60, or if someone you love is over 60, I need you to subscribe to this channel right now. I'm not asking for vanity metrics. I'm asking because the information I'm about to share doesn't exist anywhere else in this format. Explain this clearly, with this level of urgency. And if you don't subscribe, the algorithm will never show you the follow-up content that could keep you alive. Click subscribe, do it now, then come right back. Before I reveal these 6 morning mistakes, you need to understand what's happening inside your body during the first 90 minutes after you open your eyes. Because without this context, nothing else I say will land the way it needs to. Most people think waking up is a gentle process. You open your eyes, you stretch, you ease into your day. That's not what happens. Not even close. The moment your brain registers that you're awake, it initiates what scientists call the cortisol awakening response. Within 20 to 30 minutes of opening your eyes, your cortisol levels surge by 50 to 75%. This isn't a gentle nudge. This is a hormonal explosion. Cortisol constricts your blood vessels, accelerates your heart rate, and floods your system with glucose for energy you haven't asked for yet. Simultaneously, your autonomic nervous system makes a violent shift. During sleep, you are in parasympathetic mode, rest, recovery, conservation. The moment you wake, your body slams into sympathetic mode, fight or flight. Adrenaline pours into your bloodstream. Your heart rate jumps. Your blood pressure spikes by 15 to 25 points in minutes, sometimes more. And here's what nobody talks about. During those 7 to 8 hours of sleep, you lost between 500 milliliters and a full liter of water through breathing and perspiration. You didn't drink a single drop. Your blood has been slowly thickening all night long. By the time you wake up, your blood viscosity is at its absolute peak. It's sluggish. It's sticky. It's prone to clotting in ways that are measurably, dramatically more dangerous than at any other time of day. Now put all of this together: surging cortisol, flooding adrenaline, spiking blood pressure, maximum blood viscosity, stiff arteries that haven't loosened up yet, a heart that's been in low power mode for 8 hours suddenly being asked to perform at full capacity. This is why the medical literature calls the period between 6 a.m. and noon the morning danger window. The incidence of heart attacks is 40% higher during these hours. Strokes are 49% more likely. Sudden cardiac death peaks between 6 and 10 a.m. Your body, every single morning, is navigating the most dangerous cardiovascular period of the entire day, and most people have no idea. They wake up and immediately start doing things that pour gasoline on this fire. Let me walk you through all 6 of them. Write down in the comments right now what the very first thing you do after waking up is. Not what you think sounds good, what you actually do. I'm going to come back to this at the end, and I want you to compare your real answer with what you're about to learn. Be honest with yourself. This isn't a test, it's a mirror. The first deadly mistake: standing up immediately after waking. Your alarm goes off. Your eyes open. And within seconds, you're vertical, feet on the floor, walking to the bathroom, moving, getting the day started. It feels normal. It feels efficient. You've done it 10,000 times without thinking about it. But for people over 60, this simple act of standing up quickly after hours of lying flat is one of the most dangerous movements you can make all day. Here's the physiology. When you've been lying horizontal for 7 to 8 hours, your blood has distributed itself evenly throughout your body. There's no gravitational pull favoring any direction. Everything is in equilibrium. The instant you stand up, gravity rips approximately 500 to 800 milliliters of blood downward into your legs and abdomen. In some people, it can be a full liter. This happens in seconds. Your heart suddenly has dramatically less blood available to pump upward to your brain. Your brain is the most oxygen-hungry organ in your body. It consumes 20% of your total oxygen supply despite being only 2% of your body weight. It cannot store oxygen. It cannot buffer even a few seconds of reduced supply without consequences. Every second of inadequate blood flow kills neurons that will never regenerate. In younger people, specialized pressure sensors called baroreceptors detect this blood pressure drop within milliseconds and instantly trigger compensatory mechanisms. Heart rate increases. Blood vessels in the legs constrict. Blood gets redirected upward. The adjustment is so fast and seamless you never notice it happening. But after age 60, these baroreceptors become sluggish. They're like aging reflexes. There's a measurable delay, sometimes 3 to 5 seconds, sometimes longer, between the blood pressure drop and the compensatory response. And during that delay, your brain is starving. This is called orthostatic hypotension, and it's staggeringly common in older adults. Studies show that up to 30% of people over 65 experience it regularly. Many don't even realize it's happening because they've normalized the brief dizziness, the momentary vision blurring, the fleeting lightheadedness as just getting up too fast. But the danger extends far beyond the dizziness itself. When your body finally detects the pressure drop and activates emergency protocols, it doesn't correct gently. It overcorrects. A massive adrenaline surge fires. Blood pressure rockets upward. Your heart, which moments ago didn't have enough blood to pump, is now being forced to pump against suddenly skyrocketing resistance. This whiplash, this violent swing from dangerously low to dangerously high pressure in seconds, creates extreme electrical instability in the heart. The medical term is reflex tachycardia. Your heart rate accelerates violently, like an engine going from stalling to red line in a heartbeat. And in a heart that's already under the stress of the morning cortisol surge, already pumping thick, dehydrated blood, this electrical chaos can trigger ventricular fibrillation. Ventricular fibrillation is not a heart that's beating too fast. It's a heart that's stopped beating entirely. It's quivering, trembling, producing no blood flow whatsoever. Without a defibrillator within minutes, it's fatal. Falls from orthostatic hypotension are also one of the leading causes of fatal injury in adults over 65. Hip fractures, subdural hematomas from hitting your head, internal bleeding. These aren't minor inconveniences. They're life-threatening emergencies that begin with the simple act of standing up too quickly. The fix takes 90 seconds. When your alarm goes off, stay lying down. Take 5 slow, deep breaths. Then sit up gradually, keeping your feet flat on the floor. Sit on the edge of the bed for a full 60 seconds. Roll your ankles in slow circles, 10 in each direction, to activate the calf muscle pumps that push blood back up toward your heart. Then stand slowly. Pause for 5 seconds while standing before you take your first step. Those 90 seconds give your baroreceptors time to adjust. They give your heart time to prepare. They eliminate the pressure whiplash that can stop an aging heart cold. Tell me in the comments, do you jump out of bed the second you wake up, or do you already take time to transition? Be honest. The second deadly mistake, skipping water and going straight to your morning beverage or activity. I mentioned earlier that you lose up to a liter of water during sleep. Let me explain what this actually means for your cardiovascular system, because the reality is far more dangerous than simple thirst. When you lose water but not blood cells, the ratio shifts. You have the same number of red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and clotting factors in a smaller volume of liquid. This is called hemoconcentration. Your blood becomes thicker, stickier, more viscous. Imagine the difference between pouring water through a straw and pouring syrup through that same straw. That's the difference between hydrated blood and dehydrated morning blood. This thick blood has to be pumped through 60,000 miles of blood vessels, including capillaries so narrow that red blood cells have to travel single file, literally deforming their shape to squeeze through. When blood is thick, flow through these capillaries slows dramatically. Oxygen delivery to tissues drops, and the workload on your heart increases enormously because it has to generate far more pressure to move this sludge through your vascular system. But the clotting risk is what should truly alarm you. Platelets in thick blood are measurably stickier. They aggregate more readily. They form clots more easily. And if there's any vulnerability in your arterial walls, any area of plaque buildup, any spot of inflammation, these hypersticky platelets can initiate a clotting cascade that blocks an artery completely. This is the mechanism behind the majority of morning heart attacks. A blood clot forms on top of an unstable atherosclerotic plaque in a coronary artery. The clot grows. Blood flow to a section of heart muscle is cut off. That muscle starts dying within minutes. That's a heart attack. And morning dehydration is one of the primary accelerators of this process. The same mechanism causes morning strokes. A clot forms or travels to an artery supplying the brain. blood flow is blocked, brain tissue begins dying. Every minute without treatment, approximately 1.9 million neurons are destroyed. The woman who died on my table hadn't drunk a single sip of water that morning. She went straight to the orange juice, which I'll explain in a moment why that's its own problem. But the baseline issue was that her blood had been thickening all night, and she did nothing to reverse it before putting additional stress on her cardiovascular system. The solution is almost embarrassingly simple. Before you go to bed tonight, put a glass of 300 to 500 milliliters of room temperature water on your nightstand. Room temperature, not cold. Cold water can trigger vagal responses that affect heart rhythm in sensitive individuals. When you wake up, after your 90-second transition from lying down to sitting, drink that entire glass of water before you do anything else. Before your phone, before the bathroom, before getting dressed, before anything. Within 10 to 15 minutes, your blood volume begins to expand. Viscosity decreases, platelet stickiness normalizes, your heart's workload drops measurably. You've just removed one of the most dangerous variables from your morning equation, the third deadly mistake, and this is the one that killed that 67-year-old woman on my table. Consuming sugary beverages or high glycemic foods as your first intake of the day on an empty stomach. Orange juice, apple juice, sweetened yogurt, white toast with jam, sugary cereal, pastries, fruit smoothies loaded with natural sugars, anything that delivers a rapid, massive dose of sugar into a bloodstream that has been fasting for 8 hours. Here's what most people don't understand. After a night of fasting, your body's insulin sensitivity is at a very specific state. Your blood sugar is at its baseline low. Your pancreas is essentially in standby mode. And your cortisol, which is already elevated from the morning surge, is actively working to raise blood sugar on its own by stimulating glucose release from your liver. When you drink a glass of orange juice on an empty stomach, you're delivering roughly 25 to 30 grams of rapidly absorbable sugar directly into this volatile hormonal environment. There's no protein to slow absorption, no fat to buffer it, no fiber to moderate the glucose release. The sugar hits your bloodstream like a tidal wave. Blood glucose spikes rapidly and dramatically. Your pancreas, jolted out of standby mode, panics and releases a massive bolus of insulin to bring the sugar down. But because cortisol is simultaneously working to keep blood sugar elevated, your body enters a hormonal tug of war. Insulin pulls blood sugar down, cortisol pushes it up. The result is wild, destabilizing fluctuations in blood glucose that stress every system in your body. Now here's the cardiovascular connection that almost nobody talks about. Acute blood sugar spikes, what researchers call postprandial glucose excursions, cause immediate damage to the endothelium, the delicate inner lining of your blood vessels. This damage triggers an inflammatory response. Inflammatory molecules flood the bloodstream. The walls of your arteries become stickier. Platelets become more activated. And if there's any existing atherosclerotic plaque in your coronary arteries, this inflammation can destabilize it. Unstable plaque is the cardiovascular equivalent of a ticking time bomb. It's a fatty deposit in the wall of an artery covered by a thin, fibrous cap. When that cap is intact, blood flows past it normally, but inflammation weakens the cap. Inflammatory cells literally digest the structural proteins that hold it together, and when the cap ruptures, the contents of the plaque are exposed to the bloodstream. Your body treats this exposed plaque material the same way it treats an open wound. Platelets rush to the site. Clotting factors activate. A blood clot forms rapidly. And if that clot grows large enough to block the artery, you have a heart attack. Right there, right then, in the middle of your kitchen, with a half-finished glass of orange juice on the counter. The woman I lost was doing exactly this. 30 years of drinking cold orange juice on an empty stomach every morning. 30 years of creating inflammatory glucose spikes that slowly destabilize the plaque in her coronary arteries. 30 years of damage accumulating silently while she believed she was making a healthy choice because orange juice has vitamin C and is natural. The morning she died, the glucose spike was the final insult. The plaque ruptured. The clot formed. Her heart stopped. I need to be clear. I'm not telling you to never drink orange juice or eat fruit. Fruit is healthy, but the form, the timing, and the context matter enormously. The solution: never consume high-sugar foods or beverages as your first intake on an empty stomach, especially in the morning danger window. Always start with water. Then, when you do eat, start with protein and healthy fat. Eggs, nuts, avocado, Greek yogurt without added sugar, a small handful of almonds. These foods slow gastric emptying, moderate glucose absorption, and prevent the dangerous spike and crash pattern that destabilizes your cardiovascular system. If you want orange juice, have it with a meal, not before it. If you want toast, pair it with eggs and avocado. If you want fruit, eat the whole fruit with its fiber intact rather than drinking the juice, and eat it after protein, not before. The difference between a glucose spike that damages your arteries and a gentle glucose rise that your body handles safely often comes down to one simple thing. What did you eat first? Write in the comments, what is the very first thing you put in your body every morning? Coffee, juice, toast, water, nothing? I want to know, because changing this one thing might be the single most impactful cardiovascular protection strategy you can implement starting tomorrow. The fourth deadly mistake: drinking strong coffee on an empty, dehydrated system. I know what you're thinking, not my coffee. Anything but my coffee. I'm not going to tell you to quit coffee. I drink coffee myself. But when you drink it, and what state your body is in when you drink it, is the difference between a harmless daily pleasure and a cardiovascular trigger event. Caffeine is a potent sympathomimetic drug. That's a medical term, meaning it activates the same fight-or-flight pathways that adrenaline activates. It increases heart rate. It constricts blood vessels. It elevates blood pressure by 10 to 20 points in habitual drinkers, and up to 30 to 40 points in people who are more sensitive to it. Now layer this on top of what's already happening in the morning. Cortisol is surging. Adrenaline is already elevated. Blood pressure is naturally spiking. Blood is thick from dehydration. Your cardiovascular system is already operating at near maximum stress. Adding a concentrated dose of caffeine at this exact moment is pharmacological recklessness. You're adding a stimulant on top of a stimulant on top of a stimulant. You're stacking stress upon stress upon stress on a heart that's been working for 6 or 7 decades and may have silent coronary disease you don't know about. And when you drink coffee on a completely empty stomach, the absorption is dramatically faster. Without food to slow gastric emptying, caffeine reaches peak blood concentration in 15 to 20 minutes instead of the 45 to 60 minutes it takes when consumed with a meal. This creates a caffeine bolus effect, a sudden, concentrated hit that your cardiovascular system has to absorb all at once rather than gradually. I've reviewed case after case of morning cardiac events where the patient had consumed strong coffee, often espresso or concentrated drip coffee, on an empty stomach within 30 minutes of waking. The coffee didn't create the underlying disease. The coronary arteries were already narrowed. The plaque was already there. But the caffeine was the detonator.